Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back in the video today, and today I'm going to be previewing tomorrow's matchup for the Houston Texans against the Pittsburgh Steelers in their Week 4 game, where the Houston Texans will face T.J. Watt and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and T.J. Watt's brother, J.J. Watt, best Texan of all time, will get honored at halftime and be presented to the Ring of Honor for the Houston Texans. Only the second player in Texans history to go into the Ring of Honor alongside Andre Johnson, wide receiver number 80. So, I mean, yeah, it's gonna be great to see, that atmosphere from this Houston Texans arena on Sunday during halftime when J.J. Watt gets inducted to the Ring of Honor. I think there's so many things for this NRG crowd to be rocking on Sunday. Number one, you got the Texans coming off their best victory in 4 years, in my opinion. I believe their best win since their wild card win against the Buffalo Bills in 2020, which ultimately sent them on to face the Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional round, where they blew a 24-0 lead. Don't want to talk about those memories because that's what ultimately dragged the Houston Texans down a rabbit hole. But that was the Texans' last big win. That was their best win since then. That was in 2020 in January against the Buffalo Bills in the wild card when they beat Josh Allen and the Bills in overtime. But not only should that performance from last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, where they won 37-17, boost them to confidence to get them a potentially another win against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think another thing that should boost this team into confidence is having J.J. Watt in the house and having him getting honored at halftime. These fans love J.J. Watt. This team loves J.J. Watt, even though, only a couple of these guys, there's only a couple guys on the roster that played with J.J. Watt. But I think this is going to be a great atmosphere. I don't know how this team plays. You're facing a good defense. Your offensive line is very absent in this Week 4 performance. It has gotten worse, guys. Josh Jones is out. Laremy Tunsil is out. And guess who's going to have to start at left tackle? And this is something that I do not think is good for the Houston Texans at all. And it is Austin Deculus, a guy who has been terrible for the Houston Texans. And if Austin Deculus is protecting C.J. Stroud on Sunday, that is not a good thing at all, and that is not good for the Houston Texans at all. And especially with the Steelers' defensive line with T.J. Watt and company coming after C.J. Stroud with Austin Deculus at left tackle, who's one of the worst left tackles I've ever seen in my life, or one of the worst offensive linemen I've ever seen in my life, protecting him. They're gonna target Steelers' defensive line is gonna target Austin Deculus, and that's gonna be a problem. Good news, Texans are getting back safety Jalen Petrie. Now, bad news, Jalen Petrie's not an offensive lineman, so that doesn't help the Texans with their offensive line problems. I'm not going to say that helps the Texans with their defensive problems because this defense was outstanding. The players at safety who started last week in Eric Murray and Jimmy Ward were fantastic at the starting safeties. It would be great to have Jalen Petrie back, but I'll be honest, I'd rather have a big offensive lineman back than Jalen Petrie. I'm so happy to have Jalen Petrie back, but these guys against the Steelers and T.J. Watt tomorrow need some good protection on the left tackle or anywhere for that matter against T.J. Watt against T.J. Watt and the Steelers. Although I will say that I think that it's going to be great to have Jalen Petrie back after getting hurt Week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens. Another bad thing for the Houston Texans in this game, and I experienced it in 2017 on Christmas against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I went to the last time the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Houston Texans played each other in Houston, Texas. I know it's a different atmosphere. That was Deshaun Watson's rookie year. The quarterback that year was T.J. Yates because Deshaun was hurt. Tom Savage got hurt. Funny enough, Taylor Heineke, who is now the backup quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, was the starter for the Washington Commanders last season. He actually played in that game a little bit, but I mean, I remember going to that game 7 years ago or 6 years ago, and it felt like a Pittsburgh Steelers home game. And even, I know I just went back 6 years ago, but last week, Sunday Night Football, it was in Las Vegas. There was a storm of Pittsburgh Steelers fans in Las Vegas. The Steelers fans are one of the or if not the best, one of the best travel fans in the NFL. They travel like no others, and there's a lot of Steelers fans in Houston in general. So there's going to be a lot of Steelers fans there on Sunday. I'm not saying there's going to be more Steelers than Texans fans there, but I think it's going to be a pretty close amount of Steelers fans there. I mean, there's going to be way more Texans fans there than Steelers, but the Steelers are going to have a good crowd there on Sunday against these Houston Texans because these Steelers fans like to travel, and they do it in style. And not only that, but Steelers fans, I see Steelers fans all around Houston living here in Houston. So I think that it's going to be you're going to see a lot of Steelers there on Sunday. But let's go over some of the other injuries for the Houston Texans. You got 2 injuries on defense. Denzel Perryman, linebacker, who going into Jacksonville's game was the leader in tackles for the Texans, is out with a hand injury. Tavierre Thomas with a hand injury as well. Broke his hand. He's expected to return week 5, which is crazy. Break your hand and you're only out 2 weeks. That's an amazing comeback by Tavierre Thomas. Titus Howard broke his hand like 2 months ago. He still hasn't returned, while Tavierre Thomas broke his hand 2 weeks ago, and he's getting ready to return. But I think the style is probably very different for a offensive tackle compared to a cornerback and returning from a broken hand. Laremy Tunsil and Josh Jones, the 2 left tackles that we've already been through, are out with knee and hand injuries. And then who's starting for those 2 guys? Austin Deculus, who's been terrible for the Houston Texans in the past, and that is what really worries me for C.J. Stroud in this Texans offense. And then not only that, but another offensive line injury. Michael Dieter, center/guard, is questionable with a chest injury. Other guys who have been out on IR: Derek Stingley Jr., Titus Howard, Noah Brown, Hassan Ridgeway, Juice Scruggs, Cameron Johnston, the punter, Kenyon Green, DJ Scaffey Jr., Charlie Heck, Khair Zaire, Jesse Matthews, who's out for the season, Scott Quisenberry, Troy Harrison, the second. It's just a flood of injuries to the Houston Texans this upcoming Sunday. Yeah, I think this will be a good game. I think this will be a tight game. Honestly, I have it being a very low-scoring game in the first half. I've tended to go with the Houston Texans winning normally to start the season. Call me crazy, but I did take the Houston Texans to beat the Baltimore Ravens. I know that didn't happen. The Texans lost 25-9. I even went with the Houston Texans beating the Indianapolis Colts. They lost 31-20. I said that the Texans would beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 26-24 last week. They won 37-17. But this is the first time of the 2023 season I'm going to have to go against my Houston Texans. Nothing against the Texans. I think it's going to be a very big weakness with that with the left tackle spot, with Austin Deculus starting and missing Josh Jones and Laremy Tunsil. I think that will be a very big problem for the Houston Texans. Not only that, C.J. Stroud facing a good defense. I think this will be a close game. Steelers not running away with this football game. I have the Houston Texans losing this game 23-20. I hate that I have to go against the Texans here, but as much as I want the Texans to win, as much as I think there is a chance for this Texans team to win, with the offensive line, I know that they did a great job last week. C.J. Stroud got sacked 0 times, and this offensive line was way better with not only pressure coming to CJ, but also penalties, which was a big problem for this offensive line in the first 2 games. They were much better on both statistics in the first 2 games, but now with Austin Deculus starting at left tackle and Josh Jones being out, and maybe even Michael Dieter being out for this Houston Texans team as well, I think it's going to be a bigger problem than it was last week. And now you're facing a better defensive line than you faced last week. I know last week you faced off against Travon Walker and Josh Allen, but this week you face off against the Steelers and TJ Watt and company, and Alex Highsmith, who's their linebacker. He's been one of the best linebackers in the NFL over the last 2 years. So I think this is going to be a very tough challenge for this Houston Texans offense. As of defenses the Texans have matched up against to start this season, this will be their toughest challenge yet. I know the Ravens have a good defense. That was Stroud's first game. Now that he's gotten some games to progress and show his true talent, I think that this will be a very hard challenge for this Houston Texans team. And I'm going to go ahead with the predictions here. I know that CJ Stroud has not thrown an interception in the NFL. The Steelers are tied for fourth in interceptions in the NFL with 4 interceptions, picked off Jimmy Garoppolo 3 times last week. But I'm going to go ahead and say CJ Stroud goes a 4th straight game in his NFL career without throwing an interception. And I'm going to say that Stroud only throws 1 touchdown pass in this game. I honestly, I think his passing yards will be a little bit low. In just my opinion, I think the Texans are going to go to Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary. The most they have had, the most they've done all season, because the Steelers' run defense has been pretty much terrible to start the year. And I think if this pass game gets, to a slow start in the first half, I think, or the first quarter for that matter, I think this Houston Texans team might rely on Dameon Pierce. And I'm going to go ahead and say something, make a prediction here. I'm going to go ahead and say Dameon Pierce has a 100-yard run game against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. I expect Dameon Pierce to have a huge game for this Houston Texans offense. And I think that's why you're going to see Stroud's numbers go a little bit down, is because they get some more yardage that they haven't got from Dameon Pierce in the first couple weeks of the season. He has not had a rushing performance over 40 rushing yards to start the season. Last week they did get 71 rushing yards between Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce, but I'm going to go ahead and say the Texans run for about 125 to 130 rushing yards combined with Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary tomorrow. I think this Houston Texans team has a chance to win. I could see this Texans team winning by in the area of 3 to 4 points, but I'm going to go ahead and say the Steelers pull this one out with the Texans' injuries to the offensive line kind of haunting them in this game. But then hopefully week 5, the Texans will get back both of their starting tackles, and with Titus Howard at right tackle, and which they're definitely getting him back, and then Laremy Tunsil at left tackle in Atlanta against the Falcons. That would be great news for these Houston Texans going into their week 5 matchup against the Falcons. That's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed that. That's it for my preview, and let me know your thoughts on the game. Peace out.